everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Portable Library for this special edition about the late Kenneth Rexroth. Many of you know him as the father of the Beats. He was born December 22nd, 1905, and passed away on June 6, 1982. Other than him being an anarchist poet, he is also known for being an avid supporter in leftist politics, a critic, translator, and playwright. With the recent death of Rexroth, we have invited Ann Charters, professor of American literature at the University of Connecticut at Storrs, and Beat Generation enthusiast, to help us get a better understanding of some of the social, cultural, poetic, and historical aspects of his poetry. Welcome, Ann Charters. From my understanding, much of his poetry was based on his leftist political stance and that approach of being an anarchist to America's idealistic society. In his Dragon and the Unicorn, written in the late 1940s, the book-length poem vividly describes his travels and sightseeing in post-World War II Europe. Is that correct?
Yes, it does. Dragon is an exquisite lyric set piece with philosophic meditations on love, compacted evil of the modern era, past political lost causes, and many opinions, some engaging and some challenging or startling.
What can you tell us of the philosophical, ideological passages in this part of the poem, where he had said, every collectivity is opposed to the community, as capitalism and the state become identical. All existence assumes the character of a vast conspiracy to quantify the individual.
Some might feel that it comes off as outlandishly left-wing or hysterical as a critique of American society in the late 1940s, which seems today like powerfully relevant, sanely anarchist type of prophecy against the concentrated American power structures emerging out of the war. Further, Rexroth alternates such passages with nature and love lyrics as sensuously compelling and forceful.
Okay. Now, can you tell me tell me about the, I guess, ideological and sensuous lyrics where he had said, bright petals of evening, shattered fall, drift over Florence, and flush your cheeks a red or rose, and gleam like fiery flakes in your eyes. Your moist, quivering lips are like the wet scarlet wings of a reborn butterfly, who trembles on the rose petal as life floods his strange body. Turn to me, part your lips, my dear. Someday we will be dead.
This passage shows Rexroth's intellectual audacity, bright responsiveness to what he sees, and his ideological anger and compassion. The compassion is exemplified by one of the highlights of Dragon, which Rexroth movingly contrasts an age of gold in the medieval culture of southern France with one of iron. The latter was comprised of the office held by the Pope and imperialist England and northern France, which annihilated a flourishing culture of love and literature, a booming economy, and Catharsism, which is a religious movement.
So in conclusion, this piece includes wisdom, historical reminiscence, ideological inspiration and travel experience, but also a forcing revelation of the massive corruption of World War II and its consequences across the world. I'm sure you would agree that Dragon is unquestionably one of Rexroth's major works.
Definitely.
And, well, anyways, now moving on to one of his last poems written in 1978, the love poems of Marishiko. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah.
Can you explain in a nutshell how the theme dramatically changes compared to his earlier poems?
This poem represents an order of love verse strikingly different in some ways from all Rexroth's other love verse, and remarkable for a man it's remarkable for a man in his late 60s. Marishiko is a sequential verse narrative of 60 short verses supposedly written by a Japanese poetess named Marishiko that Rexroth claims to have translated, but actually Rexroth wrote them. This work constitutes an unforgettable union of passion, and in short, the series comprises a mini tragedy of being loved and left. Deeper thematic elements of the poem provide its eroticism with a process of tragic realism that is a high achievement in American love verse.
Okay. Now in this poem, it starts off with an intensity of dramatic desperation and anguish that communicate the passions permeating a love. The poem goes on to saying, making love with you is like drinking seawater. The more I drink, the thirstier I become, until nothing can shake my thirst but to drink the entire sea. Now, what is the meaning of this verse?
We've prepared for some strong erotic episodes with an unquenchable appetite for love. The poem goes on to say how love is so obsessive and overwhelming to Michiko at all times, day and night.
Now, their relations mysteriously changed by poem number 38 by saying, I waited all night, by midnight I was on fire. In the dawn, hoping to find a dream of you. I laid my weary head on my folded arms, but the songs of the waking birds tormented me, which is followed 6 poems later by my hollow eyes and gaunt cheeks are your fault. What is happening in this relationship?
This relationship has evolved because the end of love is less important than its occurrence, which for some people is inevitable, like the succession of the seasons or death.
All right, and as the poem comes to an end, what are the concluding lines? I hate the sight of coming day, since that morning when your insensitive gaze turned me to ice, like the pale moon in the dawn. What do those lines imply?
The final poems in the sequence are fraught with grief, misery, and bitterness, as the earlier ones were radiant with joy. This part implies death in the life of the woman in the poem. In conclusion, this series does not end sensationally because it ends the way such matters often do in life, in rejection, estrangement, and bitterness. The poems suggest that love begins, grows, wanes, and sometimes ends. One cannot always explain it. Love can be like that. It does end, and that is as much a part of the actual trajectory of life as unending love or marital fidelity.
Now, why are the Marichiko poems so remarkable?
They blend romance and realism with the extremities of ecstatic love by becoming part of the same world of experience as abandonment. They are also remarkable because they are free of moral pronouncement and for the narrative they frame. It allows for a great capacity for impersonal poetics, more so than his other love lyrics.
Well, thank you so much for your insight onto the 2 Rexroth poems that we just went over. And his transition in his poems greatly depicts on how he differed in life from expressing his anarchist views after World War II to his more nature-like and carefree views in his later years. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.